when people tend to find out in the course of normal conversation or whatever that I'm a Christian, that I call myself a Christian, and that also over and above that I actually go to church, which is quite unusual in this day and age, I guess. People tend to say the same kind of thing. I tend to get the same response quite often, and it goes something along the lines of, oh yeah, well, I think I believe in God. I think I believe in God, but I'm not religious, and so church isn't for me, because I'm not really a religious person. Well, I'm here to tell you today that if that's you, if that would be your response, you are so much closer to Jesus than you would ever imagine that you are, because there's this really interesting, really insightful passage in the Bible. You can find it in Luke chapter 11 if you want to read it, and it's the tale told of when Jesus gets invited out to tea. And he goes to a Pharisee's house for tea, and the Pharisees were the religious leaders of the day. So they were basically, I don't know, the vicars. They were the church leaders in Jesus's time. They were the ones that were in charge. And Jesus gets invited to this Pharisee's house for tea. So off he goes, and they're reclining at table again, as they do. And the Pharisee notices that Jesus hasn't washed before he starts eating his dinner. Now, a bit of background to that. So the Pharisees have been in charge of the Jewish church, or they're one of the sects that are in charge of the Jewish church. And they love following the Old Testament rules. So in the Old Testament, in the story of the Jewish race, God lays down in places lots and lots of rules and regulations that people are supposed to follow. And you can read all about them in places like Leviticus and that. You should go do it. It's a blast, honestly. It's bonkers. But God lays down all of these rules, and they are, they're really wide ranging. And they would say things like, if your neighbour's ox falls in a hole, go and help your neighbour to get his ox out of the hole. Rules around how we should relate to each other, how we should help each other, how we should take care of each other, and work for each other's good and each other's benefit. Other rules, stuff like the whole Sunday thing. God says in the Old Testament, in the Bible, have a rest, make one day of the week special, and have a rest on that day. And the implications of these rules, when you really look into them, what God is saying is, do these kind of things because they are going to be for your benefit. They're going to be for your physical benefit, for your spiritual benefit, for your emotional benefit. We know now, with the benefit of hindsight and with the benefit of having gone through trying to have it all, we know now that actually it's quite a good idea to take a rest, to take some me time. It's good for our spirits, it's good for our general health. It's a nice thing to do to help people out. But so God had put these rules into place, and what the Pharisees had done over generations is that they'd taken these basic premises that God had said, this would be a good idea if you did this, and they'd refined them, and they'd debated them, and they'd added to them, and they turned them into this super complicated way of life where you had hundreds of rules that you had to follow every day. What the Pharisees had done is that they'd taken God's basic premises and they turned them into a religion. And what it meant was that if you weren't wealthy enough or well off enough or educated enough or any of those things, you couldn't possibly follow all of these rules. And they had made it more complicated and more difficult for people to actually have an encounter with God. So this Pharisee notices that Jesus isn't following the rules. He's not washing in this ceremonial way that they've decided that you have to before you act. And he points it out to Jesus, and Jesus is furious Jesus is wild. Jesus, you think gentle Jesus, meek and mild? I don't see that. Jesus got angry when he needed to get angry. And this culture that the Pharisees had put in place, which had made things far more difficult for people to get to God, made Jesus furious. He was really super angry. He has a right go at the Pharisees and the other religious leaders that are around the table with him having dinner, and he doesn't stop there. He goes outside and he says to the crowd that are outside, you know, you want to watch out for these people, because actually they're making it more difficult for you to get to God, and they are refusing to listen to anybody that doesn't 100% agree with what they're saying, and they are responsible for batting down voices that would say, actually, I don't think this is what God intended in the first place. Jesus says things to the Pharisees like, you give all your money to the church and yet you're ignoring your own parents, or you're ignoring the widow at your door. That's not what it was intended. You've got it so wrong. Jesus is absolutely wild. The problem is that the church is really good at implying rules, even if we don't come out and say that actually you should do this. You know, you think back to Victorian times and we would know, you know, everyone had to go to church. You know, you should go to church, because if you don't actually appear in church, if we don't see you in church, then you're not really respectable. And when you go, you better make sure that you put your best clothes on, and you better be seen to be doing the right thing, just like those Pharisees were seen to be doing the right thing, but so infuriated Jesus. And even now, you know, we make it complicated. We do make it complicated. We expect people to, you know, come into a church building and stand up at the right time and sit down at the right time and pray prayers out of a book that we don't necessarily understand the words of, and, you know, sing hymns and sit and listen to people talk for, you know, half an hour at a time. Where does that happen anywhere else? We imply that to follow Jesus, you need to be on board with all of this stuff that can look very much like religion. And the thing is, the thing that I want to say today, and it might seem a little bit out there, and even people that are in church might think, really, Beck, is that what we want to be putting out there? But I think this is what Jesus would say to everybody today, whether we are you know, signed up card carrying Christians, or whether we're just on the edges thinking, well, I think there might be a God, but I'm not religious. The thing is, there are no rules. Christianity is not about rules. There are no rules. There is only Jesus. And there is only Jesus because it's not about what you believe. It's about what you do with that belief. So today, what I want you to do is forget about all the rules, and I want you to take 5 minutes. I want you to take 5 minutes. And I want you to find somewhere quiet that you can be, you know, undisturbed and on your own. And I want you to spend those 5 minutes thinking about Jesus. And I want you to think about how much he loves you. It's clear all over the Bible that he loves you. If you're not sure, then find a Bible, get an app on your phone. You can download Bibles onto your phone and just start reading through some of the Gospels. Start reading, I don't know, Mark or something like that, and just concentrate on what Jesus says and what Jesus does. And during these 5 minutes, then I want you to think about how much Jesus loves you. And I want you to think about how much Jesus cares for you. And not only for you, but how much he cares for your family, how much he cares for your spouse, how much he cares for your children, how much he cares for those that you love. And I want you to think about how much Jesus has a plan for you, and how much Jesus wants you to be able to follow that plan with him. A plan for you, a plan for your family. He knows what's best for you, and he wants you to be living your best life. I want you to think about how much Jesus has promised that he will protect you, and that he will be with you, and he will never leave you. And I want you to think about how much Jesus has promised that if you ask him, he will take away all of your regrets, and all of your sadness, and all of your rage, and all of your disappointments over things that you may have done, and over things that may have been done to you too. And when you've sat quietly for 5 minutes and thought about all of that, then maybe you'll be in a position to say, okay, Jesus, I'm willing to take a risk on you. Because that's what it's about. It's about being willing to take a risk on Jesus. It's not about all this religious stuff. When you take the risk on Jesus, you don't then, honestly, you don't then have to start behaving in a way just because you're seen. You have to be seen to be behaving like that. You don't have to find Sunday best. You can rock up to church in your painting clothes, or you can not rock up to church. It's about that relationship with Jesus. It's never, ever about a set of rules to follow. And if you've already done that, talking to maybe people that would consider themselves, would say, yeah, I am a Christian and I am following Jesus. If that's you, like it's me, we need to remember it doesn't stop with what we believe. In fact, it doesn't even start until what we believe spills over into who we are and how we live our lives. I've been reminded this week about that phrase. It's been going around for years. You'll have heard it before. That one that says, if you were accused of being a Christian in court, would there be enough evidence to convict you? And you know, you read Luke 11, and if part of your evidence is, well, I rock up in church on a Sunday morning, I'm not so sure that Jesus would say that that's enough, if I'm honest, because the Pharisees rocked up in church on a Sunday morning. So if we're serious, if we're living lives where we have been given that huge gift of understanding and knowing how much Jesus has done for us, then surely that should touch our hearts and touch our lives about what we do with that and where we go with that, and how many widows we've ignored for our own comfort because it's easier to look the other way. Jesus says it's not about what you believe, it's about who you are, it's about how your life changes, it's about what you are going to do today with the knowledge and the understanding that there are no rules apart from that rule to love God with all your heart and soul and strength and mind, and then go on and love your neighbour as yourself. Something to think about today. God bless.